Welcome to Backstage Melody. What if one of the greatest rock performances in history wasn't just a hit? It was a cry for help. Janis Joplin's voice in Piece of My Heart didn't just break records, it shattered expectations. It tore through the air like a scream no one saw coming, raw, desperate, and devastating. But behind that legendary howl was a young woman unraveling, a woman pouring her entire soul into every note, giving pieces of herself until there was almost nothing left. This is the untamed, tragic story behind Janis Joplin's realest performance, the moment she gave us everything, and it still wasn't enough. Before Janis, the song's secret origin. Before Janis Joplin ever tore her voice raw on Piece of My Heart, the song had already lived one quiet life, and it almost stayed there, unnoticed. It was 1967. Songwriters Berns and Ragovoy, both veterans of the Brill Building scene, were crafting hits for soul and R&B singers. They weren't chasing revolution, they were chasing chart success. They wrote Piece of My Heart as a heartbreak anthem, soulful but clean, painful but polished. And they gave it to Erma Franklin, the older sister of the legendary Aretha Franklin. Erma recorded the track in a studio in Detroit. Her version was slow-burning, bluesy, soaked in sadness, but carefully held together. She delivered the lyrics with control, like someone holding back tears, not collapsing under them. It was the kind of performance that made you nod your head, not clutch your chest. Her version made it to number 10 on the R&B charts and earned some modest radio play. But it never exploded, it whispered, it lingered, and then, barely a year later, Janis Joplin got her hands on it, and everything changed. When Big Brother and the holding company decided to cover the song in 1968, no one could have predicted what would happen next. The band was a chaotic, psychedelic garage blues group, gritty, unrefined, and electrifying on stage. And Janis? She was their secret weapon. She didn't want to cover the song. She wanted to rip it open. Gone was the slow groove. Gone was the careful phrasing. Janis blew the song apart. From the first note, she roared like someone being torn in half. She took the lyrics and set them on fire. The heartbreak wasn't just emotional, it was physical, violent, devastating. It was the sound of someone begging to be loved and punished for it at the same time. Her voice cracked, her timing was wild. And the band, they barely kept up. But that chaos, that unpredictability, is what made it real. Janis wasn't trying to be pretty. She was trying to survive. And for the first time, Piece of My Heart didn't sound like a sad memory. It sounded like a meltdown. The world had never heard a woman sing like that. And suddenly, the song wasn't just a tune, it was a reckoning. Janis took a track that had once quietly mourned heartbreak and turned it into an emotional riot. And that's when the song found its true shape, not in the studio, but in her suffering. But this transformation didn't come from nowhere. It came from deep inside Janis, and everything she had survived just to get to that microphone. Janis Joplin's private hell. Janis Joplin didn't become a rock icon because she chased fame. She became one because pain chased her, and she had nowhere left to run. Before the world saw her on stage, barefoot and screaming into a mic, Janis was just a misfit girl in Port Arthur, Texas, a deeply conservative town that never accepted her. She was bullied, ridiculed, and outcasted from the start. While the other girls were into cheerleading and conformity, Janis was painting, sketching, and listening to Bessie Smith and Lead Belly. She loved the blues, not just the music, but the stories behind it, the ache, the defiance. Even then, it was like she knew the world would never hand her peace. So, she found power in the pain. But it came at a cost. By high school, the torment was relentless. Classmates called her pig, freak, and worse. The kind of names that scar you long before you find the words to fight back. She tried to find escape in college, but was met with even more rejection. In one of the most humiliating stunts, her peers at the University of Texas literally voted her the ugliest man on campus as a joke. That wasn't just cruel, it was shattering. So when she landed in San Francisco, where counterculture was blooming and weirdness was welcome, it was like breathing for the first time. But even there, she wasn't quite sure who she was. She tried going straight, she tried cleaning up. But music was the only place where her brokenness worked. where it became fuel. And that's why Piece of My Heart hit her so deeply. It wasn't just a song, it was everything she had ever felt but couldn't say without being laughed at or torn apart. The lyrics, "Didn't I make you feel like you were the only man?" That wasn't a performance. It was a plea, a confession. Janis had been giving herself away her entire life, emotionally, physically, spiritually, hoping someone, anyone, would love her back without conditions. Every time she got on stage, she was reliving those wounds, not performing them, reliving them. Her voice cracked not because she couldn't hit the note, but because her heart was cracking too. And still, she gave more. Because on stage, even in pain, it was the only place she ever truly felt like she mattered. The vocal that tore through history. Janis Joplin's version of Piece of My Heart wasn't just a standout. It was a full-on sonic detonation. In an industry obsessed with perfection, she delivered something unpolished, untamed, and unforgettable. She didn't care about hitting every note just right. She wasn't there to impress. She was there to bleed. And bleed she did, right into the microphone. The recording session was electric. Some say Janis nailed her vocals in just one take. Whether that's myth or truth doesn't matter, because it feels like it. She wasn't going back to fix mistakes. The grit in her voice, the cracks, the near screams, they weren't flaws. They were the entire point. Janis ripped through the verses with a rawness that was almost uncomfortable to listen to, and that's why people couldn't stop listening. She wailed, she growled, she almost sobbed mid-line. And yet somehow, it stayed musical. It was chaos with soul, madness with rhythm. No one had heard anything like it. Her delivery wasn't just emotional, it was dangerous. She teetered on the edge of losing control, but she never quite fell. That tension, that risk, was what made her performance legendary. You didn't know if she was going to collapse or explode. The way she hit the chorus, "Take another little piece of my heart now, baby," wasn't a hook, it was a dare. She practically dared the world to hurt her again, because deep down, she expected it. She was saying, "I know you'll break me, but I'll still give you what's left." And that kind of vulnerability wasn't common in music, especially not from women. Most female singers were expected to sound polished, sweet, and put together. Janis showed up with smeared makeup, tangled hair, and a voice that sounded like it had been dragged through hell. And she made it divine. The irony? This moment, this perfect imperfection, was what made her a star. The industry that once wouldn't give her the time of day now worshipped her. But even in the spotlight, she wasn't acting. She was still that girl from Port Arthur, screaming to be heard. Love, addiction, and needing to be wanted. Janis Joplin wasn't addicted to fame. She was addicted to something much more dangerous, the idea of being loved. And it broke her more than any drug ever could. Despite her wild on-stage persona, Janis wasn't as tough as she looked. Behind the raspy voice and rebellious swagger was a woman desperate for connection, aching for someone to choose her and stay. She fell hard, fast, and often for the wrong people, musicians, drifters, users. And the pattern was always the same. She'd give everything and get nothing in return. In letters to friends and family, she confessed how lonely she felt after shows. Thousands of fans would scream her name, but when the lights went down and the doors closed, no one was waiting for her. She once wrote, "I make love to 25,000 people at a concert, and then I go home alone." It wasn't just poetic, it was a deep, festering truth. And that kind of emotional emptiness doesn't sit quietly. It festers, it builds, and eventually it demands something to numb the ache. For Janis, that something became heroin and Southern comfort. Her vices weren't about rebellion, they were about relief. She used it because being sober meant sitting with the heartbreak, the rejection, the memories of being that girl who never got picked, never got loved, never felt enough. Even her performances became rituals of self-sacrifice. She would drink, shoot up, and then burn herself alive on stage, emotionally speaking, just for the chance to feel something real for a few minutes. And the crowd? They loved it. They mistook her unraveling for brilliance. And in a way, it was. But it was also a slow collapse, dressed in glitter and sweat and applause. One night, she broke down crying backstage after a show. Not because she was tired, but because no one came to find her afterward. No friend, no lover, no one said, "You did great tonight, let's go home." The world adored her, as long as she was performing. But when the mic turned off, she was disposable. And the saddest part? Every time she screamed, "Take another little piece of my heart," she meant it. Because in her world, giving herself away felt like the only way to be seen. The downward spiral. After "Piece of My Heart" made her a star, it seemed like Janis Joplin had everything she ever wanted. She was a headliner, a household name, the queen of rock's revolution. But inside, she was unraveling faster than the industry could market her. Fame didn't fix Janis. It magnified everything she was already struggling with. More eyes meant more pressure. More tours meant more isolation. And being alone with her thoughts, that was the most dangerous place of all. After leaving Big Brother and the holding company, Janis hoped going solo would give her creative freedom. But instead, it only deepened her sense of loneliness. Without the chaotic but loyal brotherhood of her old band, she now stood completely alone at center stage. Critics scrutinized her every move. Fans expected her to keep setting herself on fire emotionally, night after night. And she did. But the cost was rising. Her drug use escalated quickly. She tried to quit heroin multiple times, checking herself into detox, swearing off the habit, writing letters to friends promising she was done. But the emotional holes were too deep. Without the drugs, she felt too much. With them, at least she could function, or at least pretend to. And still, she worked. Her final days were a blur of recording sessions, late-night parties, and invisible cries for help. While working on her album Pearl, Janis was pouring everything she had left into the mic, trying to hold herself together long enough to finish what she started. Friends say she seemed upbeat, but it was the kind of cheerfulness that didn't quite reach her eyes. On the night of October 3rd, 1970, she missed a scheduled recording session. The next morning, she was found dead in her hotel room at the Landmark Motor Hotel in Hollywood. A syringe on the floor, a pack of cigarettes by the bed. No goodbye note, just silence. Janis was 27 years old, another brilliant soul added to the cursed 27 Club, alongside Jimi Hendrix, Brian Jones, and later, Kurt Cobain and Amy Winehouse. But Janis wasn't just a statistic. She was a warning, a raw, burning light that the world consumed too quickly. And perhaps the most tragic part? She spent her life giving pieces of herself away, until there was nothing left to give. The unkillable legacy of raw truth. Janis Joplin may have died young, but her voice became immortal. "Piece of My Heart" didn't just survive her, it grew stronger in her absence. It turned into something bigger than a song. It became a warning, a war cry, a symbol of what it means to give everything you have, even if it destroys you. In the years that followed her death, artists across genres tried to touch the flame she left behind. Melissa Etheridge, Faith Hill, Pink, and Miley Cyrus all put their stamp on the song. Each brought power, some even brought pain. But none brought Janis. None delivered that dangerous edge, that sense that the singer was one more heartbreak away from collapsing. Because Janis didn't sing for style, she sang for release. She didn't care if it sounded right. She cared if it sounded real. Her voice cracked in all the wrong places. She screamed when the music called for melody. She sobbed into the mic like no one was watching, except millions were. And that vulnerability, that honest-to-God emotional nakedness, it redefined what it meant to be a woman in music. Before Janis, women were expected to be polished, elegant, controlled, marketable. But Janis showed up barefoot, wild-haired, slurring and sweating, and proved that being raw could be just as powerful. She made it okay to break. She made it legendary to break. And in doing so, she opened the door for generations of artists, especially women, to scream instead of whisper, to be loud instead of likable, to trade perfection for truth. And that's why "Piece of My Heart" still hits like a thunderclap. It wasn't just about a broken relationship, it was about a broken spirit trying to survive in a world that didn't know what to do with her. Every time that chorus rings out, you can still hear her in it, not just her voice, but her fight. A fight to be loved, to be understood, to matter. Because Janis Joplin didn't just give us a song, she gave us herself, piece by aching, bleeding piece. Janis Joplin didn't just sing "Piece of My Heart." She gave it away, one shattered piece at a time. That scream, it wasn't a performance, it was painful. And decades later, it still echoes like a warning, like a confession, like a battle cry from a soul the world never fully loved. She gave us her truth, raw, messy, and unforgettable. So if this hits you in the heart, don't let her voice be forgotten. Subscribe to Backstage Melody for more untold stories behind the music that changed everything. And tell us in the comments, what does "Piece of My Heart" mean to you now? Janis gave everything. Now it's our turn to remember her.